Hello to the three sages, Bruce, Layman, and John. I have just watched the Rethinking Religion Part 2, and you can imagine that I am a really enthused audience member who's shot up their hand with a question. So if you would field it, that would be really appreciated. Also, just an expression of gratitude and appreciation for the conversations that you're having together, this one in particular, and individually, and sharing. It's really appreciated. So I'll, off the bat, state the question and point at the area that the question is getting at, and then I will comment on, try to elaborate or fumble around at trying to give more of a sense of the import that this question has, or for myself, and or where it's coming from more. So a further articulation. It has to do with where you came to at the end of the conversation, and where you seem to be aspiring for further conversation. So the death of God and what grieving that death means. So the grieving process of that loss. The ask is that you the ask and the encouragement is that you articulate further what that loss means, what it means to live in that, to live with that death. The reason for asking, and the reason, the sense of the import of the question, is that the things really seem to come ahead in that moment. So I understand that in a wider context, the meaning crisis would be, and the articulation of that would be an articulation of the thing that I'm talking about. But in this conversation, that all seemed to come to a head in this very specific loss. And the religion that is not a religion that you have been speaking about seems to be finding some kind of definition in its dealing with this specific loss. So the loss of God, living without God. So the ask is that you articulate that further, just like narrow in on that. The motive, or the import that I feel with that, and how it would benefit me, is that as much as one can genuinely and authentically want to move toward grief, in the painful recognition that it's something that one would be benefited by, or it is important to go through fully. What would enable or afford the full grieving process by going into the depths of it is a full articulation of what you are living in the loss of. So what you don't have, what it means to occupy a space where that loss is existent. And so the another way to say that the import is that I really agree with what Bruce was saying, and that there's this the crying itself, or the grieving itself, is a kind of knowing or seeing that is contained in itself, or valuable in itself, that it's going to afford a kind of seeing that you would otherwise not be, that would not be available to you. And so coming to that cry, coming into the grieving process is important in terms of entering into a more intimate relationship with reality and yourself, and being able to live in the world more authentically. What seems to be a difficulty though is even coming to the appreciation of what is being lost. So I realize that this question, framed in another way, could also be asking you to articulate God. So I know it's not a small task, but this approach might also be beneficial in that it's not asking for that articulation specifically. It's more for, if anywhere, for us in this moment, we approach the meaning of God, or we approach God by falling into the cry of grief and realizing the absence or the lack. So the work that we can understand as being important is eliciting or affording that grieving process. And this is what you were saying in terms of what the religion that is not a religion could be. Something that provides that context where that grieving process can happen. So again, the question is, like, what does it mean to live with that loss? What has been lost? What are we lacking? And it's a peculiar circularity in that approaching that cry, what one seems to need to cry out to is God, and is it that cry maybe that the coming to the point of crying is the non-responsiveness of what is being cried to, and so you actually need to wail in order to be replied to, or in order to have a response of sort. And then yeah. So I feel like I'm just going to disintegrate or degrade less and less gracefully. So I'll leave the question there with a final appreciation for this conversation in particular and the conversations that you are having more generally. Thank you.